So after much anticipation, Mass Effect Legendary Edition launched at the back end of last week. Let's discuss the successes of the game, as well as discuss the importance of this remaster of a classic. So yeah, Mass Effect Legendary Edition seems to be quite a success. There's a lot of discussion around the game. For example, this week on Steam, the game had the second largest number of concurrent players in an EA game, second only to Apex Legends, and it speaks for itself, really. This remaster essentially packages all of the goodness of the original trilogy in a new shell, brings forward a timeless story, and makes it more accessible to the modern gamer. I think the biggest success of these games is the graphics improvements, especially for Mass Effect 1. You can see a lot of work has gone into updating the character models, updating the environments, and it really pays off. For example, on Eden Prime, you can really get a sense of the atmosphere that was implied, but wasn't perhaps as strong as it could have been due to limitations of technology at the time. Another example is the Citadel. The Citadel was always impressive, but it feels kind of like it's got a new lease on life. You have a lot of improvements for reflective surfaces. The water looks astounding. The metal reflections also look really well done, and it kind of really sells this kind of airy, kind of light space that the Citadel is meant to be, and that continues throughout the rest of the game too, when you're on all of the exploratory planets and such like. This also extends to the character creator. First of all, you have a much better range of options when you're going into the character creator, and obviously the UI for the character creator has kind of been redone to emphasize this. But as well as that, there's clearly been retexturing done to kind of allow a wider range of, visually appealing characters and visually interesting, stimulating characters. The same can be said of the companions that you have in the game. Characters like Garrus, Rex, Tali, they look brilliant in this remaster. They have really benefited from the upgrades to the graphics and the texturing. This isn't the case for all characters, of course. I think two prime examples that seem to kind of struggle with this are Dr. Chakwas. She kind of looks far too polished, whereas in the original you could kind of tell Dr. Chakwas's age, her kind of more senior position among the crew, visually as well as audibly. You can't quite tell as easily in this remake. Really, if you were to change her hairstyle, for example, she wouldn't look that old at all. And, if we're trying to be representative here or otherwise add kind of depth to these characters and their models, it might have been better to kind of imply the age on Chakwas's model so that she stood out against the rest of the cast in a sea of people who wear similar outfits to her and use similar hairstyles to her. Another example is Kaiden. Kaiden doesn't glow up quite as well as some of the other characters. He looks very static still. His face seems sort of stretched or kind of cardboard-esque, and his hairstyle still leaves something to be desired. It's not the end of the world. He still looks better than he did in the original. I just think they could have gone a little bit further in helping Kaiden kind of come to life in this new version of the game. Another thing that was really impressive was kind of the tuning up of cutscenes in the game. It seemed to me there being a lot of touch-ups on certain cutscenes to make them more impactful or otherwise more interesting, and especially transition scenes as well. Those really pop. They look really bright and colourful when the Normandy's rocketing across your screen, or when you see the mass relays. Those are really impressive and really enjoyable. The same can be said of the launcher for the three games. That launcher is stunning, it looks beautiful, it also is really concise and straight to the point, very accessible to new players, and very manageable generally. Speaking about general usability, a lot of the gameplay has changed to repackage this game for a modern audience. The first big one really is the change to combat. Combat feels a lot more fluid in ME1. There's not as much of a slog on to defeat enemies or to kind of navigate through quick wheels and menus. But this doesn't compromise difficulty or the need to kind of think about what you're doing. They've not necessarily made it so that you steamroll through the game. It's just that, it's just far more easy to access information about your character, your companions, your weapons, and all that good stuff. The UI, of course, has also changed to benefit this. The health bar and the barrier is more in line with what was seen in Mass Effect 2 and 3, and it really helps to just kind of solidify the three games together as a whole. It now doesn't feel as jarring going from Mass Effect 1 to Mass Effect 2, where there was a lot of changes in the original. In this version, there's a lot of similarities, and it pays off for them. It's a big success in my eyes. Another big change is handling of the Mako, which was a big thing when we were hearing about this remaster for the first time. It does feel a lot better traversing along with the Mako when on flatland or, during important parts of the story. But where the Mako and the gameplay surrounding it still struggles are on those exploratory planets, where you're kind of having to struggle up hillsides and that sort of thing. Those maps could have probably done with a bit of retooling to make it a little bit more fluid and rather less of a slog than it was in the original. Obviously, there are certain things that a remaster can't do. This is more wishful thinking on my part. There are only a certain amount of resources that can go into a remaster, and in this case, from their side, with the task of remastering 3 games in one, updating graphics, updating combat, I understand that some maps that are still technically traversable were perhaps not the biggest priority on the developers' minds. The game also seems to be relatively free of bugs. There are a few visual bugs, such as weapons not showing up when a character looks to be like they should hold one. But really speaking, the game seems to be free of kind of game-breaking bugs. The only one I've really come across so far when I've been playing is an issue where if you leave the Mako too quickly and then interact with something, the interaction won't go through, and any subsequent attempts to start that interaction also won't go through. But if you save and reload, that seems to go away instantly, so there is a workaround, and it's not that bad of a bug in reality. But yeah, guys, I think Mass Effect Legendary Edition really does a good job of balancing nostalgia with accessibility for new audiences, essentially giving Mass Effect a new lease on life. With this remaster, we do get all of the DLCs, for example, and that allows everyone to kind of go, wow, this is a one-stop shop for everything I want, either nostalgia-wise or if you're just starting out with the games for the first time. And to be able to go through and kind of find new parts that you may have missed before with DLCs that you'd forgotten about or otherwise hadn't known about is really fun as well. That happened to me recently on one of my streams, where I did a quest that I didn't quite remember from the original game. And it was fun to go through and see this world through a new lens, both narratively and visually. And I think that's what Mass Effect has achieved really well here. I think Mass Effect really reminds us that single-player games that are linear and kind of have a kind of large narrative to tell across 3, 4, however many games are still very much something that people want, enjoy, and love. And in a gaming landscape where that's not often prioritized anymore in favor of multiplayer games and games as service, I hope that people realize that there is room for both and that both should be priorities of most, if not all, game developers. I think narrative gameplay on this level is something that needs to make a larger return, and I really hope that Mass Effect Legendary Edition is a beacon for that going forward. Anyway, guys, let me know what you think about the Legendary Edition in the comments below. And if you like this video, please share, like, and subscribe. Thanks, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.